2021, I'm calling the Municipal Service and Properties Committee meeting to order. Madam Chair, can you please call the roll?
Bishop.
Here.
Joe Jones.
Here.
Joe Jones. Brancatelli.
Happy Polish Constitution Day today. Here.
Hairston. Casey.
Present.
Mooney.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please excuse the absence of Councilman Anthony Hairston, please?
Duly noted.
Okay, the following meeting held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration will be conducted as a virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meetings laws as amended by House Bill 404. The public may observe this meeting on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/Cleveland City Council and on channel TV 20 on Spectrum TV, as well as the council's website at www.tv20cleveland.com. All right, we have no legislation. We're going to hear no legislation this morning. We have with us Chief Darnell Brown and his crew and his team. Director, you want to take over? Chief, you want to take over? I'm sorry.
No problem. I've been called worse. As a matter of fact, I've been a director, commissioner, and a chief. So I answered all of those, sir. Good morning.
Thank you for being here with us this morning. Let me just first say that we appreciate you being here, taking the time out to brief this committee on the 3-year plan.
All right. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this morning. With me, I have Director Michael Cox from Public Works. I also have Director Matt Sproms from the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, and I have Terrell Cole, who is my deputy. And we want to do two things with you today. I actually have 2 documents I'd like to focus on. The first is going to be the 2021 capital plan. Stay right there, Terrell. And then the second one is the 3-year plan. But I always believe in providing context when I'm having a discussion about a specific issue. And I just wanted to connect what I'm going to talk about today to the previous discussion we had about capital projects, where we talked about the rationale, the portfolio rationale and approach behind how we come up with the various portfolios that we manage in a capital program. So this is just an overview of the things that make up the capital plan. Recall that we talked about resurfacing when we did the previous presentation. We talked about the $15 to $20 million we put in the major road and bridge program that we actually leverage with state, federal, county dollars for matching funds, usually in the 80-20 area, something like that. We have a parks program that's usually about $4 million a year. We have a pools program that's about $1 million a year for indoor and outdoor. We have tree damage sidewalk. We have a fleet refreshes, about $8 million a year. And then we have the tree canopy program, that's $1 million. So all said and done, the baseline for the programs, about $49 million, give or take. And again, we talked with you as we kind of walked through the program about specific programs that we have. One was a parks program and the other one was a rec center program. We kind of shared with you the criteria that we use to select both the major improvements in those programs, and then each of them have some ancillary programs that are assigned to them as well. So I say all that to say, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee, that what I'll be sharing with you as it relates to the 2021 general obligation bond request is specifically directly correlated with the previous discussion that we had. So based on the selection criteria, these are the programs and projects that came out of that due diligence that we did. And it, when it's all said and done, totals up to just a little under $56 million for the recommended bond issues, which the legislation was submitted and approved previously. Now, also to say that as each of these projects come forward, there will be an engagement with council for each of these projects to authorize them, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just start and go through it. And I like to make this kind of a discussion. So as I'm going through, if you have a question on a specific issue or concern, I'm happy to elaborate on that if you would. So I'll just start at the top with the first section, which deals really with recreation facilities. Again, first heading basically citywide courts and ball fields. And I kind of, as I said, did talk to you about the fact that as we look at that, there's a programming strategy for that. It's basically worst first. So we evaluate all of the parks and all of their elements as we go through them. So there's a capital program for parks specifically. And then we have a program that allows us to do capital maintenance for tennis courts, basketball courts, baseball fields, playgrounds, and then we have signage and safety surfaces. And so this is really just that program that says where we're going to be going in terms of the ball fields, et cetera, this year. It's $1 million program. I don't know if I wanted, if you wanted me to get down into, Mr. Chairman, the detail of where those are, but I could share that if council wants to know which courts, et cetera, are planned for this year. But it's in the plan that I gave you again in the previous document. If you go there, there's a spreadsheet. TC, can you pull up the parks program spreadsheet? It looks like that. So that was in the previous package I gave you. So if you, as an example, why don't we just stay there, TC, for a second? If you look at the 2021 year, you'll see, and we'll kind of go through that in 2021, the major capital renovations, and you'll see this in this plan, are going to be Forest City, Central Rec Center, Glendale, Train and Clark, and Lake. Then you'll see for the tennis courts, you'll see Humphrey, Millerfield, you'll see basketball courts, Humphrey, Millerfield, and Miles Arthur. Baseball is Carouge and Gilmore. Playground is Mohegan. And then the signage and safety services are Fannie Lewis, Empit, Crooked River, Earl Turner Rec Center, Archmere, and McGowan. So again, coming right out of the program, you go back to the main body, TC, the main program, capital for 2021. Thank you. So again, that heading encompasses all of that right out of the plan. I just wanted to share that with you. And then the same thing, as I said, tennis, basketball, playground structure, and baseball diamonds right out of the program, citywide playgrounds right out of the program. And then we get to something that's called the MEP package, which is again, citywide mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades. This comes right out of work orders, et cetera, based on priority worst first. That's in our CityWorks program. So CityWorks is a work order management program that a lot of our departments use, in particular Nagel's group, who does all the facilities maintenance. It's in his program. So it comes right out of that and it's prioritized based on that. Then I'll move down to, if you look at the next several lines, they are parks that are having improvements and renovations. And again, that comes right out of that program that I showed you. And so Glendale, Forest City, Train, and Lake Park are right out of the 2021 allocation for the program that we discussed previously in the last presentation that we just showed you on the chart. They just came right out of that program.
Okay, Chief, you know, are we going to ask questions while we're doing this?
Yes, you can. Please feel free.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Brackatelli. Councilman
Mr. Chairman.
Brackatelli. You have a question?
Yes, I'll yield, Councilman Jones, you wanted a quick point or?
Yeah, I heard that, just a point of information, that who sent this information out to us ahead of time? Because I'm trying to find it and I don't see it.
Yeah, we had gotten this when the bonds were introduced.
Yeah, I got that, but I'm talking about we were having the presentation today. So did anybody send this presentation out to us via the email?
Councilman Jones, we've been sent this information. We didn't send it, they didn't send it this past week, but we sent it. I'm not exactly sure when this information was sent.
Well,
But
who sent
right
it? Because
around-
I can't, I'm trying to find it because I can't, the screen is too small print for me to follow. So I'm trying to figure out who has it so I can print it. Who sent it?
It should have been Joe Tytron, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that correct? Because my distinguished colleague, Anthony Brackatelli.
Yeah, I'm not sure who sent it. I just have it printed out from when I received it during the bond hearings.
Yeah, because I don't have it here. And so it's difficult to follow along if you don't have the information on this.
All right,
And
so,
though it has been given out during the budget piece, I don't have that information in front of me, and I was trying to track it down so I could see where it's at, so I could look at it.
Okay.
Can
all right.
somebody send it to me? Can you send it to me, Director? Can you send it to me while we're talking about it now?
TC, you or Matt, can you all send that to the councilman?
Yes, I can send it to Vikita.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right,
So,
Councilman
the-
Brackatelli, are you done, Councilman Jones?
yeah, I just, if
Yeah,
he's gonna
but-
send it, he might as well send it to jjones@clevelandcitycouncil.org. It's quicker versus her having to then send it to me, and then the director is going through the program. Doesn't make sense to me. So
I will.
just send it straight to me if you can, sir.
will do.
All right, thank you.
All right, Councilman Brackatelli, did you have a
Yes,
point?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. One real quick, thank you to the chief. I mean, just amazing comprehensive plan and just a testament to our investment in the city. As you went through on the recreation facilities, I know the recreation department had recently sent out the spring guide and are now working on the summer guide. These overlay with the activities that are being done at each of the centers, and also show when there'll be an interruption of service. So I know in the spring guide, they didn't include Stella Walsh because it was under repair. But in the summer guide, it will reflect capital projects being done, when facilities would be made available as we reach out to our residents.
Chief, if I may,
Go ahead.
Councilman, Mr. Chairman, to the council, yes, it'll be reflective in there. If there's some construction or renovations going on at a park, playground, or a rec center, we will make sure that is included in that summer guide.
Great. Thank you very much. And certainly thank you. I know Stella Walsh will be opening back up again soon.
Yes, sir, surely.
On the summer program. So.
Yeah, we're going to mention that both Stella Walsh and Gunning should be wrapping up in terms of their repairs. Gunning's pool it's holding heat again, so we're going to be coming back out and getting both facilities back online in about a month.
And we're doing a thorough cleaning of Stella Walsh.
Great. Thank you, Director in Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilman Mike Lindsay.
Thank you.
Councilman, you got to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I got
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief and to Director Cox. If you go back up to the top of this list and under the areas of basketball and tennis,
Yes.
can you pull the screen down a little bit because that's not on there.
TC,
Okay.
there you go.
So give us a brief description as to what that will encompass. What are you doing on the tennis courts and basketball courts?
Okay, Chief, can you have TC enlarge the presentation material just a little bit? Chief, you got to unmute yourself. Chief, you got to unmute yourself.
Gotcha. Thank you. Terrell, do you you have access to the portfolio rationale and approach? If you can go to page 17 in that presentation, I think there's a before and after for one of the facilities. 16 and 17. Let's do, if you do page 16 and 17, that'll show before and after on the basketball court.
You got it. It's coming up in one second.
All right. So this Lonnie Burton, councilman, before the improvements that we would do. So we would seal any cracks or anything, make the surface safe, and then we would repaint it so it'll look like this. So that's what a refurbished basketball or tennis court will look like before and after.
Okay, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, then also on, if you can go back up, and so you would basically be doing the same thing on the tennis courts, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then if you go back up to your spreadsheet.
TC, back to the.
Okay, and if you'd go to the left, because I can't see the left side column here.
Okay.
Okay, right there. So under, so then when you say citywide playground safety surfaces, you're talking the same thing there, correct?
Yeah, so safety surfaces are a little bit different. So a safety surface is like where the kids have their play apparatus.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's taken one of all those, whether it's asphalt or concrete or some other product that's outlived its useful life, and putting in a new surface for that.
Okay. So then under your recreation facility, or excuse me, under your spreadsheet again, under your baseball diamonds.
Yes, sir.
You have Ward 8 listed there, but you have no park listed for Ward 8.
Say that again, Councilman, where?
Under baseball diamonds.
Okay.
Because I was assuming I was told there was going to be something done at Humphreys this year.
There is, and I did mention Humphreys.
But it's not on there for the ball diamonds.
But it's in the program.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It is in the program.
Okay, so it was left off of the scope or what? I'm just trying to get some clarification here, Mr. Chairman.
So actually, Humphreys, didn't we do Humphreys?
If I may, Chief,
Yeah.
and to the council, Mr. Chairman, to the council, we did Humphreys a couple of years ago, the baseball diamond. We regraded those diamonds and everything, and cut the outfield where the outfield meets the infield down. If you remember when we had the Mayor's Night Out there, those diamonds have been redone. I don't know if that's 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but we redid those diamonds.
That's Mr. Chairman, that's been some time ago. And again, I'm not going to believe, because I don't want to, we have a lot of stuff to cover, but I would ask again, that's been some time ago. So I want to make sure, because Villa Angela St. Joe's is going back out there. They're using the Humphreys again. Okay. So I want to make sure that the complex is in good shape and trying to get some additional programs going out there. So again, I'll leave it at that, and I'll look forward to hearing from somebody.
All right, we'll reach out to you, Councilman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Councilman Plinsick. Okay, Chief, can you touch on just briefly what will be done at Dove Park to the chief or the director?
Okay, if you're okay, I'm looking at Dove Park. So it depends on what we're talking about in particular here, because it's listed under a couple of things. Are you looking at the basketball? What are you looking at?
The baseball field. We have a baseball field that's kind of in disarray up there at Dove Park. So is that going to be included in this upgrade?
Okay, as I look at 2021, no, Dove Park is basketball is what I see for that. I can get you an indication as to where the baseball diamonds are in the program.
Okay.
I can find that out for you and get that back to you.
Okay, so this is just basketball. I see
It
it's
is.
just under basketball.
Yeah, yes.
All right. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Chief.
All right, let's see. So let's go back over. That's kind of, I'm trying to see a little bit more of this. Can you make, yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right, thank you. So again, as I look at where I left off here. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the MEP package, which I did say how that works. Basically, that's based on work orders in the system from NAGO. So those are going to be getting done. And so that is $1 million of work. And then, as I said, we have the parks. So these are the specific parks: Glendale Forest, City, Train, Lake. These are all the parks that are part of the about $4 million a year we spend on park improvements, if you would. And the parks have a similar portfolio to what we do, as I said, with rec centers, et cetera. So it's based on an evaluation of use, condition, programming, et cetera. And so these parks, we've been following this plan, I want to say since about 2015, 2016. So these are the ones right out of the program for parks for this coming year. And these are design and construction for these areas, if you would. And then we move from there to rec centers. So the major rec center improvements this year will be at Alexander Hamilton. It'll be at Clark, Lonnie Burton, and then, as I said, there's a big improvement for the Clark Rec Center, and then Ward 1 has a small allocation this year. As you know, Ward 1 Rec Center is significantly under construction. These are basically the furnishing packages that we didn't want to put in the capital plan last year because the center wasn't going to be open until this year. Should be finished in, I want to say, around October of this year. So these are the improvements per the plan for those facilities as we move forward. And then again, we have a couple of last remaining things, citywide roofs and citywide pools that we're going to be doing for this year. I think the citywide roofs are Cadale, Camp Forbes, and Halloran. And the citywide pools are Cadale and Fairfax and Forest Hills. So those are the programs that are in the capital plan for this year for those amenities. So that does conclude the rec facilities. So if there's no other questions on rec facilities, I want to move to public facilities.
Okay, Chief, we got one question from Councilman Jones about the rec facility. Councilman Jones?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you said that we were really under budget so we're really on track with it. We're saving money from the JFK recreational facility, or just what is that when you made that comment? What's the
the Ward 1 Rec Center is fine in terms of programming and funding, et cetera. My only point was we didn't put this line item in the budget last year because of last year's budget. And understanding the fact that even if we put it in the capital budget, we wouldn't need it till this year because the rec center is not opening to this year. So that's why we put it in this year's funding cycle,
right.
Tying up funds last year that we wouldn't be able to spend.
Right. And then that's no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Chief, we got one other question from Councilman Brackatelli.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chief, how do the improvements with the Stella Walsh Rec Center for design next?
This is all we got from the printer?
How does the design for the upgrades for Stella Walsh next year and construction the following year line up with the overhaul of the South High School as a world-class safety forces training center.
Matthew, you want to take a shot at that?
I'm sorry, Councilman, could you repeat the question?
The timing of the renovation of South High School as a world-class safety forces training facility for police, fire, EMS.
Yeah,
That schedule is for 2022. Does that line up with the Stella Walsh improvement since they're both a shared facility?
yeah, we're starting to work on that now, Councilman.
Okay,
So we're trying to put all those pieces together right now,
okay,
and see how that's all going to integrate together. Right now, we're trying to get started on and get the property transferred over to the city. That's in process. And then our consulting firms are starting a program study. So once they finish their feasibility study and program study, we'll have that kind of all laid out. That should be in the next few months.
okay. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Chief, you can proceed.
So public facilities, let's go to that section, Mr. Cole, please. All right, so public facilities is just a little bit different. So what you'll see in here, starting at the top, is you'll see something called 2021 IDIQ. Basically, this is just engineering, architectural, professional services that augment our existing staff. So we will enter into some contracts for some small project delivery items from time to time to supplement MOCAP's existing workforce. These other items, as we go through, the bulletproof vests, tasers, 3D scanners, turnout jackets, are all appurtenances and a kind of a equipment refresh for public safety, police in particular, if you would. And so that is the annual allocation for that. The turnout jackets obviously are for fire. And then we have a number of facilities that we're looking at doing some level of improvements for. Many of these are public safety facilities. So as an example, fire station facility where we're actually, I think this is fire station 11, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Yes, it's Fire Station 11.
Fire Station 11, we're actually working with public safety and our labor relations for folks, because we have to make that facility able to accommodate both genders. So this is the work that will be done to do that. We have 6 other facilities in the pipeline that we'll be doing similar work on to make them gender both gender available as well. But this is the first one in that process that we'll be doing. We then have warm, safe, and dry roof and exteriors. This is for fire stations 13, 28, and 33 that we'll be doing those replacements on. The next line item, we have warm, safe, and dry MEP, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing, capital repairs for fire stations 17, 33, and 7. It's $1 million. And then we have site improvement. This is an exterior site improvement for fire stations. This is for fire stations 24, 6, and 22, basically parking lots, sidewalks, things of that nature. And then we have fire station number 28, which is a full renovation. This is the design of that to begin that process for full renovation. So we want to design that. It'll be funded for capital in subsequent years. And then we have a number of other facilities that are getting some capital dollars as well. City Hall roof, phase 2. Hopefully this is the last repair for City Hall roof. We've had a couple of phases of that to replace the roof on this building. West Side Market Phase 2. This is the final piece of about $6 million in capital improvements for the West Side Market. I believe all of that work's been designed and bid. I think they're out for bid, and we should be getting bids in May. What is May, late May, June. We're expecting bids to come in for those improvements for the West Side Market. And then Music Hall is just some roof replacement and new air handling unit for Music Hall. A lot of improvements been made over across the street at Public Auditorium, in particular Music Hall itself. So it's been restored to its grandeur. Matter of fact, I think we got some type of a public award or acknowledgement for the work that was done there. So that's continued to move forward. Rockefeller Greenhouse, we have some structural issues with the walls there. So this is to design improvements for the exterior walls so we can make that improvement. Waste collection carts is just the annual appropriation to replace the large black carts, 96-gallon carts for waste collection, allow us to continue to build inventory for that. And then the final line item is $5 million for various IT-related purchases. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and ask if there are any questions on public facilities.
Okay, yes, Chief. Now, first, before various IT-related purchases, can you touch on what those are? And my second question, Chief, is the City Hall roof. And you saying this is the final phase of the City Hall roof? Will those holes on the 5th floor? I think we got a couple holes in the ceiling up on the 5th floor. Will all that be encompassed in that, and will that be replaced? In the council chambers, we had a leak in there at one point in time. Will that be handled after this phase is complete?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to probably defer to Mr. Sprons and Mr. Cox, but just to say that I know that the leak in the main council chamber was taken care of just because of the risk that it projected for, not just the aesthetic, but the historical quality of the council chamber. So that was done right away, if you would. As far as anything on 5th floor, et cetera, the first thing we had to do was to stop water from coming in. So we had to repair the roof before we could invest any money on restoration of any of the other floors. So I would imagine that director and his team will be doing construction estimates and design improvements for those areas post getting the final repairs on the roof done, Director.
Yeah, that's correct, Chief. Yeah, and Councilman, yeah, those repairs were fixed, and we're going to continue on. As you know, we had a windstorm come through. It blew off part of the copper part of the roof, so that's an emergency repair. That's in process now. So yeah, all these things should be being completed this year and maybe a little bit into next year.
And then as far as the various IT purchases are concerned, we have a number of software licenses and other commodities that the Division of ITS has responsibility for. So this funds those issues, if you would. So this is part of their programming for license renewals, and any upgrades to existing softwares, et cetera. As an example, we had to replace the software that the call center uses. It became basically exceeded its useful life, and it was no longer supported. So we moved to a new software program for them. So this allows them to do those types of things. It allows us to, again, get supporting and licenses for things like our AVL, automated vehicle location, and those types of things. So this is just support for those amenities.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chief. I'm going to go to my co-chair, Councilman Jones. Councilman Jones, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief. I want to first thank Anthony Brackatelli for sending me the 2021-23 capital programs. I see some of the stuff that we have on the slides, and maybe some of the amounts are a little bit different. Did some of these amounts change, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
No, sir. The bottom line is that we're asking for about it's $55,903,000 in funds. 55 million. I'm sorry, $55,903,000 in funds being requested for 2021, if you would. And then I haven't gone through the second document, which is the 2021 through 2023 capital plan. I'll make a reference to that after we walk through this, because again, these are the specific projects that'll be coming before council and their various committees as we move forward.
I see. And Mr. Chairman, to the director, and this would be on behalf of the staff that's there. I noticed that in the winter time, and I don't know if we have this on the radar screen, but in the winter times, they said where our offices and how it's structured, it gets kind of cold in there. So I didn't know if there was any kind of plan to deal with that, you know, the ones that sit next to the windows, if their heating system could, I didn't know if there was any plans for that. I know they have, you know, it has been an issue for quite some time, going back 20 some years. And if the director was aware of it, or is there any suggestions on how we could, you know, fix that, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I was not aware of that, but again, these are things that are part and parcel of things that we would evaluate and prioritize as we're looking at the capital needs for all of our buildings, so citywide. So I'll ask Mr. Sprons to make a note of that. We'll take a look at any issue or concern around that as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the director. I'm still going through this, Mr. Chairman, so if I could refer to go back on the back end, you know, as I review the documentation and the presentation, then I may have further questions. But until then, I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the director's hard work and his commitment to putting together this package and this proposal. I guess one question I would ask before I relinquish the floor, Mr. Chairman, to the director would be, you know, I know that the city of Cleveland is getting $540 million, actually $41 million in the city. Is some of this, could some of those dollars be used in lieu of the issuance of these bonds that we're looking for as it relates to spending?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, these projects are already planned, and I'm believing that the bonds are being sold as we speak for these projects. And as we discuss further, as I get into the 3-year program, I think you'll see that there's a much greater need than we actually have funding for. As an example, if I look at the bottom line for the 2022 capital plan, it's about $120 million in projects. Well, on average, we're funding probably between $45 and $55 million a year. So we have 3 times as much need as we have funding available. And as the finance director, my good friend always reminds me, we're only able to fund or finance the amount of capital dollars in general that we've actually retired debt on. So as we retire, bond issues, we are able to backfill that with additional requests. So in order to manage the city's financial portfolio. So I think that there will be some discussion on how that money gets spent. I would think that a lot more of the emphasis will be on more, I'll call it transformational type projects, not just brick and mortar, but that's a discussion that'll be coming forward in the near term, if you would.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the Director Brown.
Okay,
Chief
thank you,
Brown.
Councilman Jones. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Chief Brown or probably Director Cox, if we could look at the waste collection carts, how much does the city pay for one waste collection cart?
Chief, and Mr. Chairman, it's about $55 per cart.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, to the chief or the director, we know that we've had issues in the past with running out of replacement carts because the carts that are out there now are the original ones and they're starting to, serve their time. Is that enough? Are we putting enough into replacement carts knowing that throughout the year, we're probably going to have to throw additional dollars at replacing carts because we run out so often? Could we just take this opportunity now to increase the amount of money we're putting toward replacement carts and just get more carts now, as opposed to running out of carts sometime throughout the year like we do every year, and then having to come to council for legislation, and then by the time that gets passed, we've got a backlog, of 3 weeks to a month for people who are waiting for carts.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I'd say a couple of things to that. One is I think in particular, last year, there were a couple of allocations. As a matter of fact, kind of late in the year, there was a similar allocation of about $250,000 to kind of backfill and catch up on the outstanding number of requests, and to take into account, to your point, the kind of the rate under which these things are starting to fall apart, realizing that useful life is for a certain period of time, which is why, again, we front loaded another $250,000 in funding for where we are. I think as we get, Mr. Chairman, and through or into, I should say, the implementation plan for waste collection for the Division of Waste Collection, I think it'll be clearer what those needs are. I don't think we can answer that question today, but I would think in the near term, as we go through the implementation plan strategy for the reconstitution of the waste division, that we'll have a better idea of what the volume is and what type of can we should be replacing.
Okay, and then Mr. Chairman, to the director or the chief, are we currently on a backlog, or do we have carts available today?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we've caught up with our backlog, and we still have some carts on hand. But as you say, every day there's more carts, more older carts going out. So that's why this is in the budget for more carts this year.
So currently today, everybody who needs a can has one allegedly. I mean, you may find those couple that are still waiting, but for the most part, everybody has their cans and we have some available, correct?
Right.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, is purchasing 4,500, do you believe 4,500 carts with this amount, do you believe that that'll get us through the year? Because I'm assuming, Chief, that we have waste collection carts every year in the capital budget, right? I mean, that's just kind of a gimme.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe, Director, that 4,500 carts, barring a catastrophe, is going to be enough to get us through this year?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that is what we estimate we've been utilizing somewhere around 3,000 every year. So we should be okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Director.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Casey. Chief?
Let's move to roads and bridge bonds. Mr. Cole. Okay, last but not least are the road and bridge bonds. And some of this are kind of the traditional or annual allocations, but some of them are specific to projects that are in the pipeline for us. And I would say, just as a comment, as we do the funding on the main roads, we started many years ago, kind of with the worst first strategy for those as well. For the most part, the main roads actually have exceeded or outstripped in terms of the average PCR rating of compared to where the residentials are, which are quickly gaining. But you know, so we've been in this program for a while, and these are dollars that are leveraging funds to do a number of our primary roads and streets. And I will name some of those as we go through them. But what I'll start with, we have the 50/50 sidewalk program. This is just a small allocation. There's a balance in that account already. So this is some additional funding to fund any request for 50/50 sidewalk program. The bridge major repair program is basically funded to cover what we get in terms of recommendations from the county on work that needs to be done in terms of bridge deck sealing and those types of things for our lift bridge repair. Concrete repair, $500,000 is for specifically what it says for repair of concrete roads and streets. That $500,000 is added to any existing balance that we might have had from prior year carryover. So there's a little bit of funding there, and we're adding $500,000 to that. Gap street repair is very similar, adding $750,000 to that fund. As council knows and is aware, generally there is no funding for gap streets. Gap streets are secondary streets, if you will. So we have mains, we have gap streets, and we have residential streets. So we have funding for the other two. Really don't have a funding source for gap streets. So this is a small amount of funding, and then we supplement that or augment that many times by any funding that's left over from the residential resurfacing program. So that has allowed us to do probably 4 or 5 gap streets, secondary roads a year to begin to improve those roads that really traditionally have not had a funding source. TDS is the tree damage sidewalk program, which is one of those additional quality of life programs that we've added to the residential resurfacing, which was, as council knows, originally was just residential resurfacing and handicap access ramps. It is now, as we just said, tree damage sidewalk, non-compliant sidewalk repair. It's tree trimming, and the city has done citywide street lighting replacements. So residential resurfacing program has really become really a quality of life program for our residents in the city of Cleveland. So this program helps support that work. I think, Council President, where we are right now with that is, I believe we've done 16, 17, and 18. We did half of 19. This funding will help us do, well, we should cover the cost of doing the second half of 2019 in terms of those streets that were resurfaced. That's the protocol that we're following. So that's what we're expecting to see come out of that program. Then we have some regular projects, and I won't hit them all, but as an example, Buckeye Road, Shaker Boulevard to South Moreland is a project. Our portion is 1.7 million, but it's a $5 million program or project. Similarly, East 185th Street, Nottingham to Pawnee Phase 2 is we have a $1 million match that we're putting in, but it's about a $6 million program actually. So this is leveraging dollars to do that and so forth. Material testing, geotechnical and engineering is a professional service. So that's just the sampling that we're able to do for coring to look at the makeup or consistency of streets in many instances post and pre construction. So we know, as an example, what is the condition of the base, how much base do we have to replace, and then to make sure that when a project is completed, that it comports to our specifications in terms of what is needed. So that's what we do with material testing, geotechnical engineering. State Route 17, again, is a project that we're leveraging the funds for. We have survey equipment and so on. So you can go down through all of these projects till we get down to Councilman Brancatelli. We actually have some trails that we got in there. So we have Booth Avenue Connector Trail, Max Hayes Connector Trail, Newton Avenue Extension Trail that we're actually doing this year, if you would, and then so forth. So you can read yourself and see the number of street road projects that we're doing there. The only other thing I would call your attention to is we obviously have the allocation of that the council president has started putting in the budget for tree planting. It's $1 million as we move forward. That's on top of any existing funding that we already had in place. I believe we had like at least 900,000 that we were doing for something that used to be called what's the bug that we had? I forget. Emerald ash borer.
Emerald ash, chief.
So we don't do, it's not emerald ash anymore. It's just $900,000 for the program for replacement of street tree canopy, etc. So that is moving forward. And then crack sealing, 800,000. That's one of those necessary maintenance programs. So in addition to resurfacing, TDS, etc., we do crack sealing. So we repair, resurface, reconstruct the road 1 year. The next year, we're out crack sealing it to extend its useful life. So this funds that program. And then as you look at the last line where it says street resurfacing, $2 million, your eyes are not deceiving you. That is $2 million out of this year's GEO bond fund for residential street resurfacing, but that's on top of that will be added to the $4.4 million the streets historically gets, and there's already an allocation of over $5 million for residential resurfacing. So it will have its traditional $12 million for local street resurfacing for our residential program. So Mr. Chairman and committee, that is an overview of the road and bridge bonds. I'm happy to answer any questions on those projects as well.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We're gonna go to Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's quite a bit here to kind of consume. So let me start with asking Mr. Chairman to the chief. Is any of these roads that we have right here that's going to be under repair as well as replacement, is any of these going to have concrete?
Matthew.
Yeah, so Councilman, typically, all the roads in the city of Cleveland are what we call composite roads. And what that means is that there's usually a base, and then in this case, there'll be a concrete street that's been overlaid with asphalt, or there is a concrete street that's overlaid with asphalt. So it's not very rare, unless we're doing a complete removal and reconstruct of a road, that we put new concrete in. So what we typically do is we'll grind off the asphalt, fix the concrete base.
Mr.
And
Chairman, I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but that wasn't my question. My question, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Sprantz is, and this, what we're talking about here, are any of these projects going to be concrete streets?
Any of these projects, Matt, have are these existing concrete roads, any of them?
yeah, these are all existing concrete streets that will be resurfaced with asphalt.
So none of them are going to be, Mr. Chairman, are going to be, you're not going to do any concrete work like you did on Fulton Avenue?
No, this will be all new. These will be just replacement of existing.
And Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Sprantz, and we talked about Lee Road. I see that you have Lee Road on there. We were able 20 years ago to get concrete infrastructure, an entire concrete road on Lee Road, from Lee and Miles over to I-480, and it was our hope, and I'd been asking about this in that way, that we have concrete portion of Lee Road, which is a short section from Lee and Miles over to Scottsdale. And so I had been making that request since getting into the council. And so now I see that you do have it there, but it's only for resurfacing only. So it has been one of my main road situations. So Mr. Chairman, can I get with you, work with you, and work with the administration of seeing how we might be able to make that happen as relates to having a concrete infrastructure installed on Lee Road and completed out from what it started off at 20 years ago.
Okay, Councilman Jones, sure.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, as I look at some of the projects here for this, what is the total? Because I can't see that line item on my screen for some reason. Is that a total of 16 million?
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, to the director, I know the director talked about, the need and how it's like 3 times that. Do we have, like, Mr. Chairman, to the director, what would be the total? I mean, is there anything that's somewhere in the back, in the back levels, that if we brought it out, all the work that really fundamentally needs to be done? Do we have something like that in place where it totals more than 16 million as relates to potential future projects that we didn't discuss here? And the reasoning or the discussion is just kind of get an idea or a figure in my head, of how we could utilize, shoring up the city with some of that $541 million.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I would say that the 2022-2023 programs are a good indication of what can't be funded in 2021. If you look at the 2022 budget, it's $120 million. And so, of course, we won't have 120 million. And so the issue, yes, there is an indication of the level of need out there for what's required. So it's 120 in 2022, about 60 million in 2023 that we look at, and then understand that you're looking at the bottom line number, which is $16.5 million, but a lot of these projects leverage other funds. And so while we might have $15 or $20 million in the bond fund issue, it will leverage 2 to 3 times, sometimes 4 times the amount of what we're putting in for the project. So in many instances, we'll have a 60-40 or 80-20 split that we're putting in the 20% or the 40%, and somebody else is matching that. So this is just our local portion, our local share. It's not the total project cost.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No further questions to the director.
All right, thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the chief, we're putting 900,000 into the tree damage sidewalks, and we know we're almost 2 years behind in the way that we're initiating that program. What's the balance going forward for tree damage sidewalks?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, as I indicated earlier, this year's allocation will allow us to do the remaining portion of 2019. In general, TDS is probably between 900,000 and $1 million a year. So we're probably about $1 million, $1.2 million off funding for the year 2020 for TDS at this point in time. And then I would say that even as this program started, many in council recall that we started this as a pilot a number of years ago in wards 3 and ward 1, I believe. And the other thing that we're doing now, we're starting to pilot some other types of solutions for getting compliant sidewalk that are not as expensive. So we've budgeted some of that this year. We'll pilot some of that, and that will help us do a couple of things. That'll help us be quicker, and it'll help us reduce the cost for the actual program, if you would. I think the other thing with tree damage sidewalk is on the operation side, we're actually going to have to figure out how to also develop what I'll call more capacity, because I don't know whether council remembers or not, but we actually ran into a problem maybe about a year and a half ago, where one of the contractor that we had engaged did not perform, basically walked away from the contract, and we ended up having to find another resource to backfill that. So we need to develop more resources, but unfortunately, just due to the nature of the work, it is challenging in terms of their ability to predict how to make an adequate profit on this, just because of the sporadic nature and how it is kind of all over the city. So that's a developmental issue that we're going to be working with OEO on and some other resources to develop more capacity, because that need will be there. And as I said, we're doing a pilot this year that should be a way to help save us some money and save some trees, by the way, as well. So we're looking at those opportunities.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, to the chief, I believe that's where we got into the issue of getting behind, was when that contractor just walked away from us.
Yeah.
So can you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, can you go into a little bit more specifics on what this pilot is and where it's taking place?
Matthew, the TDS pilot you're talking about?
Yeah, so to Chair, to Councilman Casey, what we're looking at is doing some pavement milling, or I'm sorry, sidewalk milling or grinding. And you may have seen this as you walk around, like if you go to a grocery store or something, and the sidewalk's a little bit higher, they come in and they kind of cut it down so that you see how it's milled and planed. So we're doing a pilot on that. It's a lot more cost effective and faster. So we hope to get that pilot going this year. And see how that goes, and then if it's successful, we would roll that out. So that'll give us another capability to kind of work and get further ahead on the TDS program.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I would expect that this would be used in applications where the offset is minor. It's not. I'm not talking 3 or 4 inches. But if there's an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and you can shade, yeah. So
yeah, it has its limitations, right? Mm-hmm.
Then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, is this a citywide pilot program, or is this in one specific area of the city?
We just have a small $50,000 allocation right now for this pilot, that's all. And I think there's 2 wards we're looking at. It's not a lot of locations you can do for 50,000, but no, it's not citywide. It's just gonna be in a couple locations. In some areas like Chief Brown was saying, where we have sidewalks that would be eligible to do this, an inch or 2 of reveal.
Can you tell us where those are going to be, where you're looking at?
Yeah, we have a list of them. I don't have them with me right now, Councilman, but we could forward that to you, what those locations are.
Okay, if you could do that, please, I'd appreciate it. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, the 50/50 sidewalk program, probably one of the bigger, tougher issues that we deal with as council members, because we have as you've heard me say before, we have a city-owned tree lawn, a city-owned tree, a city-owned sidewalk, but then we're requesting for the homeowner to be responsible and to pay for half of it. Can you give me, Mr. Chairman, to the chief or to any of the directors online, a good answer to give to a resident when they call me and they say, well, why should I have to pay for it when it's not my property and it's the city's property who's damaging, at least, in some cases, private property, which we've seen tree roots going into driveways and, tearing up water lines and stuff like that. But how do we justify the residents paying for damage to city-owned property?
Matt, you want to take a shot at it? You manage.
So Councilman Casey and members, yeah, so just so everyone understands, but the resident or property owner, or budding property owner, they own from the face of curb in. So legally, the property owner, and we do this on our properties that we own, we have to fix our curbs and our sidewalks. So that's owned by the property owner, the curb, the sidewalk, and their apron. And the tree, as you said, is a city-owned tree. And as the trees damage that property, it's the property owner's responsibility to repair those, that infrastructure and make it compliant.
All right, Mr. Chairman, to the director. So you're telling me that the property owner owns from the curb in, correct?
Correct.
So if they don't want the tree there, right, because it's their property, why don't they have the ability, Mr. Chairman, to the director, to take that tree down then?
Councilman, I don't know the answer to that. That would be a question for law. So how the ordinances are written, how council wrote the ordinances. And we'd have to go back and research how those ordinances are written. But that's
On that point.
And we'd have to get with the law to do that research on that.
On that point, Mr. Chairman.
Hang on for 1 second, Joe, I'll give you a point in a second. Mr. Chairman, if we could possibly hold in the future, whoa, what happened?
We can still hear you.
Can
Go
you still
ahead.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where you went, but I lost my thing. So if you could, in the future, Mr. Chairman, possibly look into holding a meeting with law to discuss this property. When you buy your home, right, your deed says that it doesn't go all the way to the curb. It only goes to the end of your property, which is right before your sidewalk. So your deed to your property does not include the sidewalk and the tree lawn. So this is a question that comes up all the time for us council members. So, Mr. Chairman, in the future, if we can hold a meeting with law regarding this topic and who's responsible for what, and if it is people's property and it's the city's responsibility, we need answers to this subject. So, Mr. Chairman, and to the chief and the director, I can appreciate your responses, but if we're going to put this off on law, Mr. Chairman, I believe that we should have this upcoming meeting regarding law so that we can actually come up with the answers to this question and to see who's responsible for what damage that's occurring. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Casey, and you brought up some great points because it is confusing, not just for us, but the homeowner as well. I think we need a clear-cut answers for the public, because if we are expecting them to participate in upkeep of the sidewalks and the tree lawns, then we need some clarity on this point. All right, so we will, and I thank you for that, Councilman Casey. Councilman Jones, did you have a point?
Thank you.
On that line of questioning as relates to, and you know, all of us as council members, we all have the same situation in our respective territories. And this issue of liability of the sidewalk was something that was put in place by cities all across, or municipal corporations, as we call ourselves cities, but municipal corporations all across the continental United States. At the turn of the century, 1900, those cities began to, and each city after each city began to adopt the same concept of making it the responsibility, the liability of the citizens to be responsible for sidewalk repair, or if a tree was damaging the sidewalk. All of those liabilities were put there. But Mr. Chairman, I would say that we should look at this, have a hearing on it, and maybe even look at in those situations where those trees are causing damage and the city and the citizen wants to just cut it down because it's damaging their sidewalks, and the city doesn't get out there. And in fact, we're so bad, we're so far behind rather, that we're not even trimming the trees. So we're not even taking care of the trees in a way in which we should. And it takes forever for me to get people out just to cut the trees that are blocking the sidewalks for people to be able to pass the sidewalks. And I've sent some of those issues over to the president of Cleveland City Council because I haven't been able to get any resolution on it. So Mr. Chairman, I think that we should have a hearing on the issue and see what kind of potential resolutions could be brought about as relates to this issue. And I'm not opposed to some of those trees, one of which that comes to mind on Lipton, it's Fairfax Avenue. And I brought the situation to the director's attention where the tree has grown so much, Mr. Chairman, that it sits out.
For the capital.
Councilman Jones, we want to stick to the point of the sidewalk.
Yeah, this is the whole point of a tree. And so the tree comes all the way out to the street about at least 2 inches. So it is a hazard and should have been cut down. But because it's a large tree, I guess it would be too much of an expense for the city to cut down. But the actual tree root is now encroaching on the street. So it's in the street. So, Mr. Chairman, some of these issues certainly need, in that particular instance, I think the city needs to come down there and cut that tree down. Not only is it lifting up the sidewalk, but it has grown all the way out into the street. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, it is an aberration. And I would hope, Mr. Chairman, if the director is listening, he could help me get that tree removed. We request to get the tree removed. And we were told, Mr. Chairman, that the reason why the tree cannot be removed is because it's a healthy tree.
Okay, Councilman Jones, we got that point. Okay, let's move to Councilman Mike Palencia.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, before we move.
Okay.
And not to belabor that point, but just to say there are procedures and protocols in place, and I'm happy to sit down and have a discussion around those issues and concerns. Councilman is right, and generally, as a policy, if the tree is healthy, unless someone is planning on having some other type of work done, plumbing, sewer work, et cetera, and this tree is sitting on top of it, they won't take the tree down. So, and that's been the protocol here for many, many years. So I'm happy to engage in a discussion around this issue, but to the point, this is why we've come up with some of these strategies, recommendations, and solutions around how to make sidewalk more compliant, use other products, et cetera, so that the tree and the sidewalk can be compliant and hazard is mitigated. But in some instances, the tree is just very large. I've seen where the tree roots are growing out of the curb into the street. And so, yeah, I think it may be timely for us to revisit some of these issues so that the outcomes are more predictable in terms of where we should be as a city in terms of the management of the infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the director. Appreciate it.
All right, Councilman Mike Palencic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had two specific questions, but before I ask those, I'll just follow up on my colleagues. From a historical standpoint, the whole issue of sidewalks has been talked about for years and years and years. When homes were constructed in this city, it was a requirement that the developer, builder, whoever, install sidewalks. Then over the years, obviously, due to the growing problem with sidewalks, the city in the day put together an assessment program, believe it or not. So in the 80s, there were actual streets in the city that were assessed for sidewalk replacement, where the majority of residents agreed to have the sidewalks replaced. And then the city would bill them for that work. Then that seemed not to work after a while. And then the 50-50 sidewalk program was put into effect. The problem with the 50-50 program, it has not been adequately funded. And had it been adequately funded, due to just the size and scope, I think more people would have been able to buy into it, and the prices, the construction work would have gone down in price. So again, to my colleagues in general, if we really want to get a sidewalk program going again in the city, we're going to have to plow more money into the 50-50 program. Maybe you do that with American Recovery Act funds, or you make it maybe 60-40, where the city picks up 60% of the cost of replacing the sidewalk. The other issue is no one ever anticipated, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues, when the city planted trees 100 years ago or 50 years ago, they didn't plant the right trees. They planted trees that grew to such an enormous size, they lifted the sidewalks and they lifted curbs and they did everything else. So as it pertains to tree planting, we need to make sure that urban forestry is planting trees that have a taproot rather than a root system that sprawls out and then lifts everything. So it's a combination of things. On my own street, they planted oaks. The people who plant them are probably all dead by now. They never imagined how large they would get. And now everyone's sidewalks are lifted as a result of these oaks being planted. That's the reality. So I'll leave it at that. It's something that we need to, and again, it recommended that we have a meeting, but we really need to look at expanding the 50-50 sidewalk program or tweaking it so it works more effectively. So Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet, to the chief. Just briefly, if he would touch on the East 140th Street project, and then I'm looking for Villa View, and I've directed this to Director Sprance. I don't see Villa View in here, and yet I was told it was in here somewhere. Who wants to respond?
I'm going to defer to the Director Sprance for East 140th. You're looking for a scope of what that is?
Well, because I obviously have been lobbying, but I haven't had any communications for almost a year on that project. So I'm just trying to figure out, where are we?
Okay, East 140th.
Yes. So Councilman, we can meet with you on this.
Okay.
We're applying for issue 1 funds for
Okay.
resurfacing.
Okay.
We're going to begin to design here this year.
Okay.
And we're just going to get the design kicked off. And that's what the allocation you see is for design, $650,000.
Okay.
So we're going to get that started. And then on Villa View, yeah, I know we've been talking about Villa View for a while. We'll have to get back to you on Villa View. I don't have any information on that in front of me right now.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to getting that information from you. And also 140th also encompasses Ward 10. So that needs to be rectified in the document as well. In fact, most of it is in Ward 10. So please, if you would change that around as well. My last point is, again, it has been raised, the American Recovery Act funds. It's my understanding, and please correct me, Chief, that the administration has put together a list of potential projects and initiatives. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, that list, as I understand it, is being developed. We were having discussions late last week, so no, there is not a list. There is a strategy and potential types of projects that are being developed, and that is being led in large part in collaboration with the development cluster, but it's per the mayor's direction. So the goal at this point in time, as I understand it, is not to be as brick and mortar project specific, even though they'll be part of it, but to look more in terms of the impacts that can be derived from some type of transformational type project. So something that not only is a brick and mortar project, but has some a broader community impact as it relates to either housing, job development, et cetera, or all of the above, transportation, having the ability to impact. And I know they've been working, Councilman Brancatelli knows this very well, they've been working on strategies around community impact, impactful type projects. So funding projects in that vein that not only are road and bridge and facility, but have broader community impact for residents, et cetera.
But Mr. Chairman, who is the point person on this? We obviously know that the mayor is going to be the one who ultimately signs up, but there's got to be a staff person who is the point person. Who is that person?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, most of that discussion is being led by Chief Ripka and Chief McCall at this point. But I will be happy to take a message back to say that we probably need to figure out how or when we will say something with regard to your question, the strategy and the projects that will come out of this. When will that happen? So as again, right now, as everything I understand, we've been in discussion stages. We created some categories last week in terms of types of projects. So I can tell you there are no specific projects other than a couple of examples that have been done. So it's being developed.
Because obviously road resurfacing is a big one for all of us. The conditions of our streets citywide, obviously parks, playgrounds, recreation, et cetera.
All of those.
Because we'll never have an opportunity like this again to really direct funds toward capital projects or long-term that will have a long-term impact on our communities and our residents. So again, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm really looking forward for the council to being really engaged in that process. And then my last point is I thought we had requested, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, I thought we had requested Ann Tilley or someone, John, to get together, get us a list of all the wards and what the dollar amount that was allocated this year for resurfacing for each ward, so we could see that dollar amount per ward. So I made a request through the chair. I thought we had asked for it, but I have not received it, so I have not seen that.
Okay, we'll work on that, Councilor Pulisic, to get you that list.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues.
Okay, now we're gonna go to Councilman Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this has been a wonderful presentation. And if I could just back up a little bit real quickly, Mr. Chairman, to the chief. I know early on in the presentation, you touched on the PCR, the rating. I think it's just important to note that the grade of our streets is improving exponentially since you have been working on this plan. So I just want to make sure we don't forget that even though people feel like we're not doing enough streets fast enough, the overall grade of our street level is improving and has improving. And I think, Chief, can you say what is that grade now moved up to?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I want to say it's about 77, 78% on average now. across the city. And that's up from like 68, 69, where we were. And I think our target when we started this program in about 2014 was to get an average PCR rating of about 75%. And the fact of the matter is, when we hit 75, we need to keep going. So again, the average PCR rate, I'm looking at my notes here now. We finished we finished last year. We finished last year at 74.
You can look at the screen.
Okay. We finished last year at 74. All right. And so that means this year we're certainly going to be well above one. By the time we finish the 170, 200 streets we do this year, we'll be about 70, about 76-ish, I would say. So we're well ahead of where we were, 5 or 6 years ago. And that's on the residential side. The primaries are even in better shape in terms of their average PCR rating. But you are correct. The other thing that you reminded me of, Councilman, is the fact that as we get rid of more and more of these F streets, and there are, believe it or not, there are some wards that are starting to have a de minimis amount of F streets in their wards, and we're gone to some fix it first models in terms of other types of treatments. And so it ends up reconditioning the road surface, and it costs really about a third of the cost of a regular resurfacing. So when we start getting into fix it first mode, the ability to leverage that resource will get us exponentially more pavement reconditioned in the city of Cleveland. So that was always the plan, to go from worst first to fix it first. But you're right, we've really moved the ball in the right direction as far as the overall street grid is concerned. And I can see the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's an important, we're asking for our residents to be patient. The plan is working. We're moving in the right direction, and this thoughtfulness and approach, we are going to get to these streets, and we're going to eventually get to that point where we have 0 F streets. But it is a timing issue and a commitment on both sides of City Hall.
Yeah, and then the final point, Councilman, just on the fix it first piece of this. Fix it first actually goes from, because right now worst first is F streets. Fix it first goes to C level streets and starts catching them at C and fix them so they don't deteriorate into D's and F's. So the strategy, where we didn't invent this. I hate to say that we weren't smart. We didn't invent this, but it worked. We've proven it works.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you couple that with the crack sealing and all the preventative stuff, it really is making a big difference.
It is.
And just also a note on the tree damaged sidewalks, I think having that program now put in place has made a significant difference also as we're catching up on our sidewalk improvements. And it's the overall feel on our streets as you get through on that kind of complete and green streets when you're going through them, also is a patience for our residents that we have a strategic plan and these are working. And you also noted just on the issue on capacity and construction. That's a issue across the nation, is having enough contractors and folks doing this work. When we talk about where the city of Cleveland almost hit $1 billion in construction last year, and that would be 10 years running. So there's a lot of work going on. This isn't a flat economy when it comes to construction and infrastructure. And when we talk about these big bills coming forward out of Congress around infrastructure, that's going to be a challenge. You can only do so many roads and so much asphalt plant work. Again, the managing that capacity is really significant. So, and then I think one other point, and you had mentioned around the federal funding around the America Ward 12 Recovery Act. We still don't have the roles. I think that's the other part. Outside of using funding to help fill the gap of where the cities have lost money because of COVID, you know, mostly right now, as we're putting plans together, it's speculative until we have the rules and what the regs are that are going to come down with the feds on this.
Absolutely, 100%. So,
and so lastly, just a quick question. I had one of the, in our capital project, one of our major roads one of our roads being done is Independence Road, which connects to our amazing industrial facility, Cleveland Cliffs. I truly appreciate when folks talk about public comment and public engagement. Both Manager Swatowski and Director Sprance and others who have gone out to these public meetings, whether it's Zoom or other platforms. For Independence, who would that point person be that we would engage? Because I know the industries are asking us because of the maintenance of traffic. Independence is going to be critical with all that truck traffic.
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, so Director Sprance and I have had a direct conversation on that. So between he and Swatowski, they will work through. Matter of fact, you and I need to kind of circle back. We had a conversation we started maybe about a month or so ago, and we need to finish that conversation on the process. So I'm actually going to be in that discussion until we get to the point of deciding the timeline, et cetera. So.
Okay. Great. And I know that also impacts our Job Ready site as we're getting a lot of interest in that as our market conditions improve too. So, all right, that was the last I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to further discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Brackatelli. Chief, by the way, do we have a breakdown of the average PCR ratings for the streets citywide? Do we have an average breakdown of it by ward, or is that incomplete?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we have that in a report. I'm sure we have the data. And so if we needed to generate average PCR rating by ward, we could do that, I'm sure.
Okay. It would be helpful so the members can see, you know, what their streets are like versus other parts of the city.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, to Director Sprance or Mr. Cox, if I'm not mistaken, I thought we had some information that we had accumulated on where the PCR ratings were by ward, where we started a few years ago, and where they are now. I'm pretty sure I saw a report that indicated that. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct, Chief. We have all that data in
Okay.
CityWorks.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can, if you can share that with us. Okay.
I would concur with that, Mr. Chairman. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to probably belabor a point, but I think it's because it's very important. You know, when Casey talked about the tree damaged sidewalk, you know, it's a complicated issue because property lines are different in different parts of the city. Sometimes the property line is in the middle of the street. Sometimes it's in other places, depending where it is. But, you know, I ran into this problem where the news called me a week ago because there was a large tree on one of my streets. It destroyed the apron and the sidewalk. So the question, you know, that he brought up, you have a city tree on private property destroying an apron and a sidewalk. Why is it the residents' responsibility? Now, I would just urge the chairman to please tell this again, to have that committee meeting, because there is an ordinance that makes it the residents, and Mr. Petcack, I talked to, you know, Urban Forestry. Petcack can point out that ordinance. I think we should just discuss that because it is sort of, I believe, unfair, even though it's been a practice, that a city tree destroys a private sidewalk and the city won't remove the tree. And yes, there's a program to repair the sidewalk, but then I've even seen, you know, talk to people, they repair the sidewalk, the tree roots come back 10 years later, and it doesn't take care of the problem. And of course, so here's the bigger picture. The bigger picture is everybody would agree, I'm sure we should do something about that, but it's just, you can only do the things you can do with what money you have. We can't run deficits. So, I mean, quite honestly, I tell some citizens, no, the city doesn't trim trees well. We don't do this because we don't have the money. And I think that's the real reason. You get the services you're willing to pay for, that you have money for. And I just hope that this council remembers this issue when we talk about the American Recovery Act, because this is a big issue. I probably have 2 or 3 on every of my street, I've estimated I probably have a couple hundred of these trees that have destroyed sidewalks and aprons and more, hundreds of them. If you start multiplying that by the wards, you're talking millions of dollars to remove city trees that are the problem. And we don't obviously have that, but we might want to consider allocating money for that to take care of this, and also addressing the policy of where the city won't even let the resident take out a destructive tree that's on their property, even though it's a city tree. I mean, to me, that seems crazy, that you should be able to, especially if it's destructive, but the city will only remove they won't remove healthy trees. And then, along these lines, this TDS program is great, but, I'm sure Polensek will agree with me on this, is that this does not benefit the people that have brick streets. Don't get the TDS program. So, just like we have no money allocated for brick streets, there's no money, there's no revenue stream, devoted to taking care of our brick streets. They're doubly penalized because the residents with the brick streets are never going to get the TDS program. I know Donna Brady did a pilot program. She helped pay for my ward, but that doesn't address the problem. I mean, I think just by identifying here, we should just council remember and have this meeting. Remember that this is an opportunity to devote money to brick streets, because even though we ask for it, there's still no revenue, no stream of money, no attention being paid to any of our brick streets. The TDS program is good, but it doesn't identify brick streets. And, we should consider some of these other things. But I would just urge our committee chair to hold that type of meeting. I know PETCAC has the ordinance, and we can discuss, and again, we can do whatever we want as long as we're willing to find the money to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, if I could just offer one comment. As part of the residential resurfacing program, actually, we did implement about a year ago a tree trimming process as well. So any street that we're now resurfacing also gets tree trimming as part of their program. Now, I realize that that's not a global solution, but it certainly is a step in the right direction to start addressing tree trimming in a timely manner.
And and I'm sorry, I appreciate that, and that is good news, and I'm not criticizing you, because we can only do what we can with what we have. But again, you pointing that out, that means the brick streets don't get the tree trimming. That's another point. And I know Polensek has a lot of brick streets, and some of the other councilmen. It's just something to think about. But
understood. I get your point.
Yep.
All right, Chief, we can move to the next section. I do want to say this, Chief. We have a long line of meetings today because of various reasons. So we do have a 12 o'clock. So I'm not exactly sure if we can squeeze all this in before, because everything will be thrown off. Okay, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, I am finished with the 2021 project presentation. The 3-year project list also includes 2021, which we already did. We just did, but it also lists out potential projects for 2022 and 2023. And so many of these projects, if you start with the presumption that we have our normal portfolio of programs or projects that make up about $49 million worth of work. Everything else is an additional project outside of that. So as an example, you'll see a number of projects that are necessary and vital, real necessity in terms of project or program delivery. But the decisions will have to be made along the lines of what the capacity is for us to do such. And so as you look at 2022, it was not my goal or my intention to walk through the 2022, 2023 projects, other than to say they are, as an example, and realize that I would hope that the council hears me loud and clear, that we should not assume that in 2022, the city is going to do $120 million worth of project. We'll probably do something between the 50 and $60 million range, which means that decisions will get made as to above and beyond, again, what our standard program portfolio is, what can we fund above that, and then anything that does not get funded in 2022 will either show up in 2023 or 2024, which is just to say that doesn't make it not a viable project. It just means it's limited. There is a limitation on what our funding capacity and ability is, but does not take away from the fact that it's a viable project or a valuable project. So I'm happy to, in the interest of time, entertain any questions that council may have about a specific project or a specific process in the program, if you would. And then just to say that, not just now, but in the future, I'm happy to talk in a group or one-on-one with anybody who wants to have a discussion around a particular project or program that's in this 3-year plan. But again, these are all viable projects, have been vetted. Many of them, in particular, the street and road projects are listed in a way because we have to put them in, and as they become eligible for matching dollars, they end up in the program, if you would. So if I got a project here and I can't leverage the matching dollars for it, it gets moved out of that project year to another year, because we know what the criteria is for the ability for projects to leverage funding. And when we get the indication that, yeah, it's eligible, it's probable it will get funded, it shows up in a hard fashion in that capital plan. But there are a lot of them that are good projects that need to be leveraged with other state, federal, county dollars to make them fundable. So I'll just stop there.
Okay, Chief. Chief, I got a question. I have a couple of roadways in my ward. That's the Boulevard, Martin Luther King Boulevard, and it's a very wide street, and it's such that the residential resurfacing program doesn't adequately encompass that street. Can you talk about those streets? Those large streets. They may not be main streets, but there are streets that the residential street resurfacing won't adequately fund. Can you talk about that? And for me, it's Martin Luther King, and I've talked about this with the streets personnel already. Mm-hmm. So they did tell me to bring it up to you and to MOCAP about those particular streets.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, you're kind of describing one of these secondary roads that we call gap streets. Mm-hmm. And that is one of those ones that we don't have funding for, but we found a way to fund a number of them. I think of late, we've been able to fund a number of them. We do about 4 or 5 a year. And so we do that by basically setting the funding limits for the residential resurfacing program. And usually there's some level of funding left over for that. And then we'll probably put, as you see this year, we put $750,000 into the Gap Street program. And so that allows us to fund these types of streets that normally don't have a normal funding source. I think we did Wildlife Way like that about a year ago. Matt, you or Michael, we did a number of other gap streets like last year, and we have some plan for this year that we've looked at what is the level of funding. So usually we're trying to fund maybe about $1.7 million, a little under $2 million a year in what I'll call secondary or gap street funding. And we're able to put funding together to do those. But we do have the same type of strategy. We use pavement condition rating for these secondary streets. And we evaluate them and we prioritize them based on the worst first kind of strategy to get them done. And we've been chipping away at it and making some good progress on getting a number of these secondary streets done. So Matt, you or Mike want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Chief, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, you're talking about Union to 116th? Are you talking about that part of Martin Luther King?
Well, yeah,
Kinsman.
that's my section, but it also goes all the way to Kinsman, I think it is, right?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, from Kinsman. all the
I
way
think
to-
Kinsman was done. I think that part was done, but yeah, from Union to 116th is not done.
What we'll do is we'll look at it, we'll rate it, Chief, and we'll then see where it falls on the rating list for Gap Streets. Okay?
For Gap Streets.
All right.
Okay, all right, great, appreciate it. All right, Councilman Mike Polensek.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just to follow up on your comments. So to the chief, why don't we set a specific percentage or dollar amount for Gap Streets? Because all of us have them. And we go through this every year. As you've indicated, there isn't an adequate funding or line item for them, but yet they're not going anywhere. They're in the city of Cleveland. People drive them every day. Villa View is one of those Gap Streets. And so those of us, you would take all of your local ward resurfacing, and those of us who don't get the lion's share of the ward resurfacing funds, there's no way for us to repair them. There's no way for us to resurface those streets. So there they sit and they continue to deteriorate.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, to the
Gotta be a
council.
resolution.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, they're not sitting. We've done, as I said, and over the last 3 to 4, we've done about 4 or 5 of these secondary Gap Streets a year. And we've been able to put funding together. It's about a couple $1 million a year we're able to do in Gap Street funding. And it's making an impact on the condition of the secondary streets. So to the extent that funding is available, we're using it. As you say, they obviously they don't qualify for matching funds for primary streets, and they're quite expensive. So as you say, they break the bank for residential resurfacing. So we found a way to fund them that gets about 4 to 5 of them done a year. I'm willing to have, as we've looked at them and we've ranked them, to kind of look at what's left in the list of streets that really need work, and whether or not, how critical is that work that needs to get done, particularly as we're looking at an opportunity, maybe a one-time opportunity with this funding we have in place. So we are looking at, and I do have a list of what the priorities are for Gap Streets, secondary streets. I'd be happy to share that with you so you can see what's happening with that program, what we've done and where we're going.
Well, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the response. It would be interesting for us to get a list of all the Gap Streets, what you, as the administration defines as Gap Streets, and what the rating is of those.
Happy to do that.
Because then at that point, we have a better idea as to how big the problem is. It should
happy to
be
do that.
a percentage of funding and direct it to the Gap Streets.
I'm happy to provide that.
Okay, thank you, I look forward to receiving that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Blessing. All right, I see no further hands. Okay, well, if we have no further hands, we can call the meeting adjourned. Chief, do you have any other final comments, or Director Sprons or Director Cox? Do you have any other comments before we adjourn?
No, I would just say, kind of in the spirit of Councilman Brancatelli, to the council, that I really, on behalf of the administration, do appreciate the fact that we've been in these programs probably for about the last 4 to 5 years. We proposed them 4 or 5 years ago, and we've been following the plan in terms of how to make decisions on park, playground and other improvements, resurfacing, et cetera. So, council, basically gave us the authority to develop and do these programs. They sanction them, and they've been working, and I appreciate the partnership with council to continue to move these projects forward, because they are making significant quality of life impacts for our residents in the city of Cleveland. And to the councilman's point, even in an environment where we got limited resources, to find a way to optimally utilize those resources in a fair and equitable way is an important thing for all of us. I really appreciate the support that we've gotten from council to move these programs in. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we did touch on it just briefly earlier. Chief, do you have any kind of timeline when you can predict that you'll communicate to us about the some of the projects that you guys thinking about with the CARES Act dollars?
I will get back to you very quickly. I will push this up the chain, and we'll make sure that the representative person gets back to council leadership so they can share with you what our strategy is. Okay. All right. We have a hand just went up. Councilman Joe Jones.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things as we move forward, we have this $540 some million, and I know the council had a brief discussion about it, but Mr. Chairman, I think that, and I would suggest that we sit down and caucus over this issue of $540 million. I will be asking the president of Cleveland City Council to do the same, where the council can come together and truly talk about, the needs of the city, what we should be focused on, and what should be the priorities of at least the council. And so now on the administrative side, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, have we, I'd heard some rumors or some talk about the administration had been reaching out to certain development corporations, possibility of projects and of the like. And I didn't know if we were doing anything like that as an administration, reaching out or doing anything as relates to solicitation. So are we, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, doing any solicitation as it relates to the usage of the $540 million that would hopefully come to our city to help us?
I can't confirm or deny that. I don't know that to be a fact at all. All I know is the internal discussions that we've had, and it did not involve a discussion in that regard. But as I said, I will push up the chain, the questions that were given to me, and we will make sure that an appropriate response is given to Cleveland City Council with regard to our thinking as it relates to this funding.
And Mr. Chairman, to the chief, certainly, as we, as this administration is putting it to the side, certainly I'm would certainly be at least on the capital improvement side, looking to see how we can put more money into side streets. These are the issues of the citizens of the city of Cleveland, is that our streets, even though we have our program, somehow we've gotten behind in the course of some time period, and our streets are really still in need of assistance. The program has it, some areas and communities are far worse than others. I know that the southeast side in my neighborhood, we have a lot of side streets that need to be repaired, a lot of work that needs to be done on our side streets. We're really excited to see all the work that's being done in our sister Ward 2 in terms of infrastructure and concrete streets. So all their streets are being done, even their side streets being done. So I really appreciate that work being put over in that area. But Ward 1 is one of the highest voting ward turnouts in the city of Cleveland, and we need a little bit of some love over here, Chief. So if we can get some resources on our side streets, we would be very appreciative of that. And we would hope that this $540 some million will hopefully boost that program. As you know, I've been lobbying to put a program. I think that as a major city, we should be putting $20 million or $30 million on our side street programs every year in and year out. That way it keeps our streets nice and clean. And nothing says I love you more as an administration that goes out there and take care of them side streets for those citizens. And so I would appreciate it if we could get that program boosted up to about, at least, since we got this extra funds, we should put at least 30 to 40 million in for the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, Councilman Jones, I'm not sure you recall or not, but I know when the mayor gave his comments when he did his letter of transmittal, one of the things he talked about was, but for the impact of the pandemic, it was his goal to spend about $20 million on residential resurfacing this year. So,
right.
Yeah. So,
and I'm glad the mayor is there, and I'm glad you brought that out, Mr. Brown, because that's been my thrust from day one in City Hall, that we shouldn't be looking at these small packages. We should be spending 20 to 40 million. A major city of the size of the city of Cleveland should be spending at least $20 million to $30 million a year on this side streets packages. And so I really appreciate the administration, Mr. Chairman, but I just wanted to put that little ding in there, Mr. Chairman, to the chief to see if we can, as we looking at the 540 million, how much more money can we put into the side streets program, and then be able to capacity wide carry it out. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Councilman Jones, thank you. All right, Chief, before we close, I got another question, Chief, about a recreation, a park renovation that's in the 2021-2023 capital budget, and that's Glendale Park, and it says complete park renovation. Could you expand upon what will be entailed in that? Will it be the basketball courts, the tennis courts? Will it be the pool? What is that? And if you can't answer that, Chief, I'm sure the director may have a comment on that.
Well, if I may, Chief,
go ahead.
And Matthew can jump in when he gets a chance. We did the tennis courts about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Chairman. So we're looking at the basketball court, the play equipment. I'm not sure, Matthew, are we putting a spray basin in there or anything? Are you aware?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. We'd have to see if it's eligible for one, but it would be considered for one, yes.
Yeah, so when we get the plans together, Mr. Chairman, we'll make sure that you're aware of what the plans are. But you know, it's a lot of concrete in that park.
Right.
So we want to green it up and make it more of a park than it is with all the concrete. So.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get, as soon as Director Sprons gets through with his total plan, then we'll share that with you.
Okay.
And the other, okay.
All right. Thank you, Director. All right, seeing no further hands, the Municipal Services and Properties Committee is hereby adjourned. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director Sprons. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.